So, Magic the Gathering. What a card game we play. What have we got? We've got a little life counter. Oh, very nice, very nice. Various numbers. Yeah, very good. And we've got a large piece of paper. Gavi Warden. Horrible looking creatures. Big pterodactyl dude. Asian woman and shark. What else? Okay. Okay, here we go. Ooh. Nice load of tokens. Krakens. Angel. Bird. Yeah. Elemental. Ooh, it's quite a cool goat, actually. And, of course, we've got Drake and Josh. Let's have a look. And then we have... Oh, here she is, the woman herself. Gavi Warden. And Astral Drift. Excellent card. Very good. Nice cycling theme. Dismantling Wave. Very, very good. Fluctuate. I like these old reprints they've got it here. Very nice. Ooh, and a foil Tectonic Reformation. And a foil Decree of Silence.
Very nice.
Hold on. Is this a deck tag? Hello there and welcome to the very first episode of the Pantheon. My name's Hido and let's get straight into it. Gavi Warden is a legendary creature human shaman. She reads, you may pay 0 rather than pay the cycling cost for the first card you cycle each turn. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, create a 2/2 red and white dinosaur creature token. She's also a 2/5. Ooh, nice. Overall, I'd rate this deck at about a 5.4. It's fairly powerful, can do some broken things. It can be quite miserable to play against if we set up our combinations correctly, but it's easily disruptible. So, meh. So, what is it that Gavi wants? Well, you guessed it, she wants cycling cards. Not that big of a surprise really, considering she says cycle all over a card. It is a bit annoying that she doesn't have cycling herself. Not that relevant as a commander, but personally, that's what I'd like to see. So, number 2. More cycling cards! Wow, who would have thought it? But in this specific version of the deck, we're going for a very enchantment-based cycling theme. Number 3. As it says on a card, she makes tokens. So, things that work well with tokens, that's exactly what we're sort of looking for. Number 4. Win. That's it. It's about the point of every deck really, isn't it? So now we know where we're going with the deck. Let's start. Enchantments. The main engine of this deck revolves around 3 rather unremarkable white creatures. Auramancer, Monk Idealist, and Lotus Eye Mystics. Each of these have the text, when this card enters the battlefield, return target enchantment card from your graveyard to your hand. These creatures, along with Astral Drift, Astral Slide, or Escape Protocol, which all have variations on whenever you cycle a card, exile target creature until the end of turn, it enters under its owner's control. If we have both of these pieces on the field, along with our commander Gavi, we can set up a loop where each turn we can cycle an enchantment for free, which flickers our white creature. Our white creature returns, enters the battlefield, returns an enchantment from the graveyard to the hand, which is what we've just cycled. And the next turn, we can restart the loop again. However, this whole loop is rather flimsy. Our opponents can destroy either half of our onboard pieces, but we do have a lot of redundancy, having 3 of each of the pieces in our deck. This sort of loop can also be done with Archaeomancer and Mnemonic Wall for instant and sorceries, but I personally prefer the enchantment sub-theme. Especially because if you have Astral Drift, you can use that as your cycling enchantment, because when you do cycle it, you can exile target creature just from the cycling ability alone. Then when it re-enters, return Astral Drift itself to your hand. But what enchantments are we using to constantly do this loop? The best one in the whole deck is Decree of Silence, which reads, whenever an opponent casts a spell, counter that spell and put a depletion counter on Decree of Silence. If there are 3 or more depletion counters on Decree of Silence, sacrifice it. Then has the ability for cycling for 4 generic and 2 blue. And it reads, when you cycle Decree of Silence, you may counter target spell. If we can get the loop going with Decree of Silence as our cycling enchantment, we can counter the first spell our opponents play every turn for free. And draw a card while we're doing it. While we're discussing Decree of Silence, we are also playing Solemnity, a 3-mana enchantment which reads, players can't get counters. Counters can't be put on artifacts, creatures, enchantments, or lands. If we have both Decree of Silence and Solemnity in play at the same time, Decree of Silence cannot get any counters on it, and therefore it will never sacrifice itself for having 3 or more counters. Which is nice and fun, isn't it? I mean, your opponents can still cast their spells, so I don't know why they're complaining. I mean, just nothing will resolve. Other than that main one, what other cycling enchantments do we have? Reconnaissance Mission is a great new Ikoria card that works excellently with this deck's light token theme. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. This does stack, so for each creature that deals damage, you draw a card. So if you have 20 creatures dealing damage, you draw 20 cards. Shark Typhoon is another great Ikoria enchantment. It again works with our token theme, creating flying sharks, which, absolutely incredible. However, you do need to be aware that if you are using Gavi's replacement effect to make the cycling cost 0, you can't generate a token because you can't pay the X, you're instead paying 0 for the whole cycling ability. This is different for Decree of Justice, which while not an enchantment, it is relevant to this, as the ability to create the tokens is a separate ability from the cycling ability. Cast Out is a fantastic removal spell that covers all bases. It gets rid of anything that we want, and at instant speed as well. Tectonic Reformation is such a sweet card, giving all of our lands cycling for a single red mana. It's a pity we can't play Life from the Loam, as we are playing a good number of cycling lands as well, but I guess you can't have it all, and Reformation is decent as a standalone card. This next card that I saw during Ikoria preview seasons I was very excited about. Unpredictable Cyclone. Now, this card does have a lot of words on it, so try to follow along at home. If a cycling ability of another non-land permanent would cause you to draw a card, instead, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a card that shares a card type with a cycled card. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost. Then, put the exiled cards that weren't cast this way on the bottom of your library in a random order. So, we can cheat out some free stuff. And, the casting of it ignores timing restrictions. So, you can fire a sorceries in your opponent's turn by just cycling. Originally, when I was making the deck, I had planned to run just 2 sorceries. Chroma's Vengeance and Decree of Annihilation. My plan being that, say you were casting a big creature, Herald of the Forgotten, I don't know, whatever. You could cycle Chroma's Vengeance and then go through your entire library until you hit Decree of Annihilation. While your big idiot that you're casting is still in the stack, you would then cast the Decree of Annihilation, wiping out everyone's board, everyone's hand, and then you'd be left with just a big flying dude, and hopefully you could kill them. And that is still in the deck. That is something that can possibly happen. It's just a lot more random, because there was just too many good sorceries to go in the deck. Rounding out the enchantment package, we have Enlightened Tutor and Idyllic Tutor that can find any one of these cards, and it just adds so much to the consistency of the deck. Finally, I'm also trying out Dance of the Manse, which allows us to return enchantment and artifact cards from our graveyard, and it seems quite a cool card. And also, it is a budget alternative to Replenish, which is incredibly expensive at the moment. But it does also have quite a lot of added flexibility and usability in the specific deck. We are running both Commander Sphere and Mind Stone, so we can easily sacrifice them to fill our graveyard and then reanimate them back. And if X is greater than 6, they all return as creatures, which can easily win us the game, not just because they can attack, but because of our next section, tokens. Perforos, God of the Forge. Now, he has a bunch of text, but the part we're interested in is, whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Perforos deals 2 damage to each opponent. So, if we do Dance of the Manse back 8 enchantments, that's 16 damage to each opponent. And every single token that Gavi creates is 2 damage. On a similar axis, we're also running Impact Tremors, which is a diet Perforos, you know. He's leaned out, only dealing 1 damage per creature. But it still adds up, and it will win us the game. Drakehaven and Valiant Rescue are both key token generators that work from cycling cards, allowing us to amass a very nice wide board state by just simply playing out our main game plan of cycling. The Locust God works on the same axis and has 2 major advantages. He works on literally any draw, and he can also loot for himself if we're caught without cyclers in hand. He is, however, 6 mana, so he does require a lot of setup. Nadir Kraken and Spirit Cairn are another 2 great token generators. Each of these do work with cycling, but they aren't restricted to it. Finally, we have 2 just generally good token generators. We draw a lot of cards in this deck, and Chasm Skulker can get pretty damn big, and when he dies, he spits out a whole raft of squidlings. Seasoned Pyromancer does everything this deck wants to do. He has a sweet Enter the Battlefield ability that we can reuse with Astral Drift effects. He draws and discards cards, and he makes us tokens. This is a great example of a card which covers all of our game plans at once. Interactions. Cycling is a lot like casting a cantrip. 2 mana, draw a card. But what's even better is getting something attached to that cantrip. Vizier of Tumbling Sands allows us to untap something. If we have Gavi out, this can be used as a nice bit of ramp, getting us a mana ahead for that turn and potentially landing a big threat. Slicing Dice can wipe out a bunch of tokens, or some early mana elves, as it deals 1 damage to each creature. Astral Drift can be used for the combo that we were talking about before, but it can also fog one of our opponent's key creatures, or flicker a token creature out of existence completely. Decree of Justice can easily create a game-winning board state by dumping a bunch of tokens onto the field at the end of an opponent's turn, while Complicate and Decree of Silence are excellent counter spells that are just perfect for this deck. And if you are ahead, Decree of Annihilation being cycled can easily cement that fact by removing all of your opponent's resources. But just be aware, people will not be happy with you. Then we have one of my favourite little pieces of tech in the deck, Vidalcan Aether Mage. This little beauty can choose up any wizard in the deck. And while pickings are a little slim in this build, you at home could easily put some more impactful wizards into your build. My favourite targets are Auramancer, so you can try and assemble the combo we were talking about earlier. Nimble Obstructionist for some sweet stifle action. Riel is another great target, allowing you to double your draws from your cycles, working in a very similar way to Alhammaret's Archive. Ramp. The deck runs 11 pieces of ramp, but 2 of them aren't really ramp. Eternal Dragon has always been a card I've really liked, but he is really quite slow. But then he does cycle, so I couldn't leave him out. He gets you your lands, make sure you get your fixing. The other is Fluctuator. This card covers a lot of the same space Gavi does, reducing our cycling costs. But it is always good to have some redundancy. Vizier of Tumbling Sands is another interesting card, and while we do want to be cycling in this deck, if we do hard cast him on turn 3, he does allow us to get our commander out on turn 4, which is pretty sweet. He can also be used as a nice political tool. He can untap a creature of one of our opponents in exchange for a favour later down the line, say if they're getting attacked for lethal. Then, coming into the 1 mana slot, we have the ever-present Sol Ring. How could you possibly not play it? Then, at 2 mana, we have Mind Stone, Arcane Signet, and 1 of each of the Guild Signets. Rounding out our Ramparama, we have Regurin Crystal? Reogrin? I don't know. And Commander Sphere at 3 mana. And finally, my robotic friend Solemn Simulacrum, coming in at 4 mana. Hoping to get in on some sweet Astral Slide action. The rest of the deck is just random good cards. Lightning Greaves helps us protect our commander, as she is very key to our game plan. Consecrate Sphinx single-handedly triggers Gavi's draw 2 cards per turn trigger and creates a token. And then the rest is just removal and counter spells. So, let's have a look at some opening hands and see what we're looking to find. This first hand is pretty much perfect. We have one piece of our combo in Astral Drift, and our Wizard Cycler can go and find the other half, the Auramancer. The only clumsy thing about this hand is that we're somewhat stuck on 3 mana plays. We'd be looking to play the Signet on turn 2, and then on turn 3, probably cycle Yidaro and hopefully find another 2 mana cycler to keep digging. Then, turn 4, we can play Gavi, begin by cycling Aether Mage, and then protecting Gavi on the turn cycle with Astral Drift. If anyone tries to point a removal spell at her, we flicker out of existence, she comes back, we get to our turn, we play our Auramancer, get back our Astral Drift, the combo's assembled. This is a definite keep. This next hand is a pretty big dud. We have powerful cards in our hands, like Drakehaven and Consecrated Sphinx, but we have no cyclers to get our engine going. We don't have a 4th land for Solemn Simulacrum, so our ramp is very delayed. We could even miss on that, but we do have to be unlucky to miss lands on 4 draws before we get to playing Solemn. This is a borderline keep, but I would probably throw it back, especially as in this deck we have a lot of cyclers to give us some early plays. This final hand is pretty sweet, as we have our Fluctuator and a good amount of cyclers in hand. There is a bit of tension on turn 3 as to whether we cycle away our Rogrin Crystal away. I would lean heavily to no. We don't cycle it away. We want to develop our mana as much as possible. But we definitely do cycle away the unpredictable Cyclone, as we can always rebuy it later with an Auramancer effect. And that is the deck I built for Gavi Warden. Overall, I'm quite happy with it, but there is a lot of issues I have with the actual card Gavi. And if you'd like to hear them, I'm going to be releasing a video later this week going through some of those issues I have with it. But please do remember, this is only my take on the deck, and you can build it however you want. And I really do encourage that. Make whatever sort of deck that you want. Because that's all I've done, and it's bloody miserable to play against, so do whatever you want. And finally, thank you very much for watching, and please subscribe if you want to watch some more.